half from them will be in the morning, from what they've just said.
It's already morning.
Maybe daybreak, daylighter.
Daybreak. I think that's better for daybreak. I think there's a reality dawning, on people that, the race is what it is.
Choosing your words.
Yes,
very
because we cannot call the race. I don't think that the briefing has done much to shed further light on anything. I do recall earlier on when they had the first briefing.
Yes.
Just as the counting started, they showed us the different monitors and told us how the results would be streaming in. And I think what Alex has said in terms of being able to know how many counties have carried the day. For which candidate, what we're looking at in terms of percentages for counties, that will help people to interact with this information. There seems to be a very deliberate attempt not to say the obvious yet, or to say what, how things are unfolding. So I will also be cautious, because I also don't want to be accused of running ahead of the pack. But I think that they have just asked very politely, in very many words, just asked Kenyans to relax, to go to sleep, and we continue interacting with the process tomorrow morning.
Yes, and indeed the portal...
Or rather, at daybreak.
Yeah, here was an interesting thing that Chiloba said, because he was asked by one of the journalists there whether this is a back-end issue. He said, it is not. And he talked about 28,000 polling stations that are reporting. Also said, interestingly, that it's about 30,000 stations with 3G coverage, and that's where the results are coming out from really fast. And it is now the remaining ones where the coverage isn't so good that things will start to get a little bit slow. What did you make of this? And has it shed more light for you? Not for Daisy, but for you, are things a little clearer now?
I think this whole press conference was, in my view, very superfluous. It did not change anything in terms of information and bolstering confidence in the public. One, for Mr. Chiloba to say that the problem was just about refreshing the screens.
Yeah.
Okay, so that the pages could then reflect how much data had come in from the back end. I think that's just not on. That's not clear, and that's not satisfactory. Okay, that's a very trivial problem, and that should have been figured out a long time ago. But I think when they talk about transparency, those global numbers, without knowing where they're coming from, is less than transparent. It doesn't, in my view, meet the threshold, which basically is that the votes must be declared by the smallest tallying unit and then aggregated to the county. Yeah. So we need to know how the counties are doing. That, to me, is not too much to ask. It is a minimum that is required so that people have confidence in those global numbers that they're indicating, so that we also know where these how many were they? Numbers. About 11,000 polling stations.
Yes.
That were not in the 3G network, yes, could be transmitted. So we know where those are. But I would like to dispute that by saying that we don't know how Nairobi is doing yet. And Nairobi is within 3G.
4G,
Mombasa is 3G largely.
Yeah.
And Kakamega is also 3G largely.
Yeah.
But we haven't seen those results. Not what they've displayed. Maybe it's another refreshing problem. Oparanya is stuck with 3 votes at 100% in Kakamega, for instance. Is that a refreshing problem? I think, just like we said yesterday, there's so much money that has gone into this process,
yeah,
and there's so much time that they had to make sure that they check these things and not come in this 11th hour when it's most crucial, when tensions are palpable,
yeah,
to then make these very superfluous statements to the press.
Let's try and have some... Well, I'm not sure if I can box you into making some projections, but if we take a look at the race in Nairobi, for example, Joy, who do you think did the most to perhaps convince the voters, especially when you take a look at the governor's seat? Some people said, well, it wasn't much of a choice. between some of the candidates that were there. I was just sort of picking the lesser evil. But, you know, what are your thoughts about how Nairobi will go and how crucial is Nairobi, considering it's got the highest number of voters? So whoever wants to win, I mean, would certainly want to do well in this county.
Just before I go there, I have a slightly different take on what we had from Chiloba. If I understood him correctly, he says that the problem from the back end is not the back end is not the issue. The issue is the front end.
Yeah.
The refreshing.
Refreshing with what's happening.
Yeah,
in
the
back
refreshing
end.
tool, which I understood to be that they were getting so much data at once that they were not able to update in real time because there was sort of a bottleneck with the information. Now, as we all use computers, and you know, okay, fine, sometimes there can be things like that. But now what that also tells me, therefore, is that people on the ground know a lot more than what we are seeing now. And what I would have expected is, even if we cannot get the breakdown county by county, at least then do the manual thing, read it out loud, because obviously you have the information. If the problem is just refreshing, refresh us yourselves, you know. And that's what we're
not like
about.
they don't have the data.
You can tell us, you know what, this thing is going to refresh soon enough. You'll be able to see it up there. But this is what we have so far. Because if from the county's information is coming in, he said, what, about 28,000 polling stations. We have over 40,000 polling stations. So that's more than half already in. If we are at more than 50% that are already in, surely we don't have to wait for morning for us to know a little bit more than we know now. But I like the fact that they have admitted that they're giving the presidential campaigns a little bit more leeway than we have. Because at the end of the day, if anybody has got the locus to go and start challenging this, they would be the first port of call. So I think maybe as the night progresses, as morning progresses, because already morning, as morning progresses, maybe the campaigns will be able to shed some light. So I'm looking forward to the NASA presser, because maybe they may be able to tell us something that the Chiloba Commission was
what
not able to.
What do you think is likely to be said in the NASA presser? Because they've raised issues throughout the campaign, raising issues even with this now.
And I'm even surprised that they've waited this long for a presser, actually.
Yeah?
We're so used to them having a presser almost
immediately, right?
Yes.
And maybe they've been crunching the numbers as well, and maybe trying to make sense of what's going on. But, I mean, if they are the ones, and every reason suggests that they could be the ones who had asked the IBC to stop the display of results. This is interesting. What then? What sort of things you project they would be saying in their presser?
Well, first of all, I would hope whatever statements they make, they are able to back them up. Because we've had a lot of statements and allegations that have been made by the opposition, some of which have been proven to be, not verifiable. So at a point like this, because, of course, when you look at the numbers, and let's be honest, when you look at these numbers, and given the hype, with which, their support base was mobilized, there must be a lot of disappointment among them. And I would hope that whatever statement they make, they will be careful not to flame passions, not to make statements that cannot be verified or they do not have proof of, and that they would be urging their support base to be calm. We don't want irresponsible statements at a time like this, because we know that it is irresponsible statements that have led then to, episodes where then people react. So while we wait to hear from them, because there are many questions that all of us are asking in terms of being able to understand what we are seeing, to be able to understand the figures, because while the portal is there, there are just certain things that are not sitting right. With quite a few people, there are questions that are being asked. We don't want them to come giving us the same questions. As Joy said, you have your agents on the ground. They have signed off on these forms. I mean, this is the thing. Unless they're going to tell us that these forms have not been signed, but let's not forget they're being scanned and also...
Right. Okay, so some interesting things that you would expect from that. Alex, there's one for you. So just very quickly, because we want to take this conversation to our city center studio where our journalists have been patiently waiting, people who are paid to talk. And they've been quiet for quite a while, so I'd like to go to them. So if you take a look at that portal, for Nairobi, Raila is in the lead with 51.09. That's about 725,000 votes. Uhuru Kenyatta is at 686. What do you make of Nairobi? What do you think? Which way will it go?
I think Nairobi is the bastion of discontent. This is where people feel the pain of lack of governance, the pain of mismanagement of the economy. People are switched on. Here's where Unga basically is a big deal. Rent is a big deal. The cost of living generally is a big deal. So people, I think this is really the pulse of the Uhuru administration. This is where this should be the barometer. This is where they would come and kind of check things up and see where it's going. And from everything that everybody has been saying about the failures of Jubilee, et cetera, here's where it would play out objectively, without any ethnic biases, where people actually are voting with their pocketbooks, if you like. So I would expect that if NASA ran a good race, they should actually carry this by, in my view, even a larger margin than 51%.
Okay, all right, okay, and we'll come back to that as we take a look at these numbers that are coming in, because I want to take this to the journalists, and I really want to talk about, the so-called fringe candidates or all the other manner of animals that we've called them, but we'll come back and talk about that, whether they can cause an upset, because a lot of them are now at 0.1%.
Be upset.
Whether okay. All right, Joy, that's a good place to take this to our city center studio. Julie Masiga is there with the journalists, and it's interesting to see these numbers coming out, and maybe they can react to that press briefing. Julie, you guys have been quiet for a while, so I bet you've been doing a lot of thinking and talking amongst yourselves. What do you have to say?
Yes, we have indeed.